Hi everyone, this is Ashley Latecki Ellenboss with Sky House Herb School and Apothecary, and today I'll be talking about allergies, and specifically 3 herbs that you can use to help with allergies and 3 practices that you might find also very helpful with reducing the symptoms of allergies. So why allergies? Well, I wanted to just share a personal story because as a child, I had very, very severe allergies. I had asthma, and every spring and every fall, I would usually end up in the emergency room having to take albuterol or having to take in oxygen because of such severe allergies and asthma attacks. I was allergic to cats, I was allergic to tree pollen, I was allergic to grass and mold and just about everything you can imagine. And luckily for me, when I was about 12, my mother took me to a naturopathic doctor, and the naturopath recommended some wonderful things that really changed the trajectory of my life and my health. And it's one of the reasons that I got into herbs and got into alternative health and wellness. So what are the things that you can do? How can you, if you're struggling with allergies, and often, allergies and asthma can go hand in hand because of the way that the inflammation is mediated in the body. So if you struggle with either one of those or both of them, you might find these suggestions to be very helpful. So let's start by talking about the plants. The number one plant that I would recommend that everyone takes if they suffer from allergies is nettles. This is also called stingy nettles, and so don't be afraid by the name. It does sting when it is fresh, but when it's dried and it's powdered or manufactured, it loses that sting. But this is a really wonderful medicinal plant because it is so nutritive and high in vitamins and minerals, especially things like iron and calcium and magnesium. So it's a nutritious food. And so a lot of times with allergies, part of the reason of why we might be so triggered or so susceptible is that there might be underlying issues going on that we might not know about. And in my case, I had some food allergies that were undiagnosed, specifically dairy allergies. And so the naturopath that I went to see actually moved me to a vegetarian diet and took out all dairy. And with that, in combination with a number of other things like herbs and homeopathy and acupressure, within 6 months, my asthma was gone. So, to me, it was such a critical thing to figure that out. And while I didn't know about nettles at that time, I think a lot of the nutrients that I was getting from my dietary changes was a big part of that shift. And so at nettles, because nettles is sort of like a superfood, it has so many things in it. It can help to fill in the nutritional gaps that we might have so that our body can function a little bit better. So nettles is also high in a compound called quercetin, and quercetin is an anti-allergenic or anti-allergic compound, and it has immunomodulating activity. So what it does essentially is when we have an allergen that comes into our body, so like a pollen that floats in from the air, our immune system thinks, oh no, it's an invader. I need to call in the troops and activate the immune system. But in reality, the pollen is it's not really a threat. It's not actually going to cause us any damage, and our immune system is just overreacting. So what quercetin can do is it can block that initial histamine response where the body starts to activate and send out all of these inflammatory responses that then give you the itchy and the running, dripping, stuffy nose and all of those allergic reactions that we can have. So that's one of the reasons why I think it's a really, really good one. There was also a double-blind study that was done in 1990 on a number of participants with allergic rhinitis, which is, allergies specific to the nose and, drippy nose, itchy eyes. And there was a significant improvement when they took capsules of freeze-dried nettles. Now, I don't typically use freeze-dried nettles in my practice. I really like people to make an overnight infusion using the dried leaves. However, if you're not a tea person, then you can by all means try the freeze-dried capsules, and those are available from a number of great vendors. One that I like in particular is Eclectic Institute. They're a very high reputable company, and they do carry freeze-dried nettles, and the freeze-drying keeps them very, very fresh. So that's my first first herb is nettles, 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 for just about, it's good for many things, but allergies in particular. The second one is goldenrod. And a lot of people mistake goldenrod for ragweed because they both bloom in the autumn around the same time. And goldenrod has these wonderful sort of spikes of these golden flowers, and the heads sort of droop over, and they can line the roadsides and line the fields, at least here on the East Coast and certainly throughout the Midwest. So they are not often triggers of allergies. It's usually ragweed, which blooms around the same times, which has these tiny little inconspicuous little kind of whitish, greenish flowers. So, in many ways, the goldenrod is actually an antidote to the ragweed. They grow and bloom at the same time. And one of the great qualities of goldenrod is that it's high in tannins and it's quite astringent. So it's really, really good for the type of allergies where your mucus is just flowing. You've got just that drippy nose and the watery eyes. So you can try using goldenrod for that. I recommend doing a hot tea. You don't have to do an overnight infusion for this one, but you could just do, maybe a few tablespoons full of goldenrod into a few cups of hot water, let it sit 15-20 minutes, strain and drink. And this would also be something that you could try in a capsule, but the dried plant in a tea is more preferable. The third plant is Tulsi, or also known as holy basil. And this plant has an incredible long history of use for a number of different things, including it's adaptogenic, so it helps our body recover from stress. And certainly, as someone who's had so many allergic responses in my life, it's exhausting. After you have a big allergic flare-up, you just want to sleep. It really taxes your system. So what Tulsi does is it has a few qualities that make it really, really nice for allergies. It's anti-asthmatic, and so I don't like animal studies, but this is how it works a lot of the time. But they did a study with guinea pigs, and they found that when they gave guinea pigs Tulsi extracts, that they actually had decreased amounts of asthmatic attacks, and also they had it protected against histamine reactivity. And so we talked about histamine as being one of those inflammatory components that gets launched into this system. And so Tulsi will also inhibit that histamine reaction, so you don't go into that itchy allergic response. It's also been shown to stabilize mast cells, which are part of the immune system, and suppresses IgE, which is one of the inflammatory markers that is pretty common in allergic responses. So Tulsi or holy basil can also be taken as a tea. This one's pretty easy to find, so you could just even buy organic tea bags and just, steep, I would say 2 of them in a cup of hot water, and then drink that, ideally in the morning and in the afternoon. And that should help with asthma and with allergies and those reactions and responses. Now, what are some other things that you might be able to do? And these are things that I do as an adult. My allergies, I don't really have asthma, so, knock on wood, but I will sometimes, if I'm eating a lot of dairy or food, I'm not allergic to dairy anymore, but if I eat too much of it, it will cause my system to start to overreact again. So, when some of the actions that I've taken that have really helped me is, number one is cutting out dairy and cutting out foods that tend to be, that have a higher likelihood of being allergens. So for most people, these are things like, it can be dairy or soy or wheat. For some people, sugar can also really jack up their system and can make them more susceptible and more prone to having allergies. So you just kind of want to think about your diet, also reducing meat intake and trying to increase fresh fruits and vegetables, especially things that are high in vitamin C and antioxidants, like all of your berries. So blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, those would all be wonderful things to increase in your diet, along with leafy greens and things like that. The second tip I have for reducing allergies is to dust, dust, dust. And while dusting is usually not on the top of our favorite things to do list, it's a very important activity if you have allergies, because even if you don't have your windows open, the pollen will find its way in through your clothes, and every time you open and close the door, those little things are getting in. It's especially important to dust your bedroom or the place where you sleep, and to wash your pillowcase and your sheets regularly. And during allergy season, once a week minimum, and even changing your pillowcases every few days, just to make sure that you're not sleeping with your head really, really close to pollen. Okay. And then the third recommendation I have is to use a Neti Pot or some sort of nasal saline solution spray. A Neti Pot is a traditional Ayurvedic technique. It looks sort of like a little genie pot, and you fill it up with, you do want to use distilled or strongly filtered water. You don't want to just use tap water for this. So you'll fill it up with some sort of sterilized water, and then you'll put it in your nostril, and then you'll tip your head over and it'll drain out. And you can watch a lot of videos on how to do this. But doing nasal drainage and nasal flushing is very important, because it will rinse out any of the pollen that's adhered its way into the nasal cavity. And it will also just keep those tissues hydrated, which is really, really important. So we often add a little bit of salt to the neti water, which also helps to keep the tissues nice, and it dries them out, but also allows them to hold fluid a little bit more easily. Then the most important thing is, after you do a neti pot, that you use what is called Nastya oil. And so so Neti Pot is spelled Neti, and you can look that up. And then Nastya oil is also an Ayurvedic preparation, and it's spelled Nasaya, Nastya, I believe, something close to that, Nasya or Nasaya. And so this is an oil that is infused with a number of different herbal remedies to help keep the mucous membranes of the nose intact and healthy and strong. And the most important thing is that when you put the oil in there, it also helps to bind and deactivate any pollen that gets into your nose while you're out and about, outside, even if you're just going to your car and going to work, those short periods of time, then you can actually get the pollen stuck in your nose. So Nastya oil, the way that I use it is I'll just, it comes with a dropper full. The company I use, and I have no affiliation with them, is Banyan Botanicals, Banyan Botanicals, and they sell neti pots and they sell the Nastya oil. And what I like to do is just tilt my head back, and I'll take the dropper and I'll just put, a small little squirt up my nose. You'll plug the opposite nostril and just sniff the oil as high up into your nasal passage as you can. And then you'll do the same thing on the other side. Drip, drip, plug, and then try to draw it up. And it won't flow out, if you just do a few drops, and that will coat and protect your nasal passages. So I hope this is helpful. Let me know what you've done to help with your seasonal allergies. If you have any other tips or other herbs that you like and that you found to be helpful. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Have a good day. Bye-bye.